Time went on. Eventually, Muhammad's sayings were collected and compiled into a book we know of as the Quran. And again, your authors mentioned there's a little bit of controversy about that. The Islamic people tell you that the Quran was put together one time only, and once together it has not been changed from its very beginning. Other persons have recently disputed that and say no, the Quran actually was edited a few times and altered a few times before it was finally put down in its final form. But once it got into the form we see today, it has not been changed. So whether what we have today is the original or a slightly altered version of the original, we really at this point have no way of knowing. Muhammad and his followers then went on to conquer and unite all of Arabia. Something that had not been done. Nobody had ever been powerful enough to unite these desert oases into one nation. He united all of Arabia with himself at the head, and then shortly afterward he died. Yes?
What's the Kaaba again? Kaaba?
Kaaba, that is the stone that fell. That's the area around the stone. It's the holy place. The holy place where they had once had more than 360 or so idols. And that's where the stone was located. And the idols made a circle around the stone, a fairly large circle. Now, it's important today because the stone is still there. And Islamic people are told by Muhammad to go there if they can. Once in their lifetime, make a pilgrimage to Mecca and worship there around this stone. And most Muslims try to, at least once in their lifetime. And if you could stand at a vantage point in the orbit or in space and look down on the Muslim and see only Muslims, you'd see the Muslims form circle after circle because 5 times a day they'll pray, and they always pray facing Mecca. From wherever they are, they'll pray facing this area right here. All right. One of the biggest weaknesses that Muhammad's teachings had, and it's a weakness that continues to this day, Muhammad never named a successor. It's almost like he thought he was going to live forever and never told the world how he wanted to pick a successor or when the leader died. And what this means is that when the leader of an Islamic nation dies, much too often there's a huge superpower struggle that eventually one of them wipes out all the others and becomes the leader himself. Again, this has been a real problem they've had. All right. When Muhammad died, Abu Bakr, his uncle, took over. And this begins the story of the 12 Imams. Now, what I'm about to tell you is not in the book and will not be on the test, but I became interested the other day, and about a week ago I did some research on this because I kept hearing about the 12th Imam. So I got to do researching. And if you look it up, you'll find that there were 11, right after Abu Bakr, there were a series of Imams, all of whom were related to the Prophet Muhammad. And every one of the first 11 of them was either poisoned or died at sword point, but they were all assassinated. Now, weirdly enough, when I say poison, the first 2 or 3 were poisoned by their wives. And most of the rest of them were assassinated on the order of the Caliph because they and the Caliph did not get along very well. So they all died. Now, as I said, there were 12 Imams. The first 11, the article I read told what each of the 11 tried to do and when he reigned and who was the Caliph who probably had him killed. And one of the Caliphs had about 2 or 3 of them killed. But then came the 12th one. The 12th one disappeared. Now this is something you'll hear about in the news, so that's why I'm relating to you now. A lot of Islamic people are looking for this 12th Imam to come back, to reappear, and when he does, he is supposed to unite all of the Muslim people, and they will conquer the world. So they're trying to pave the way. I mean, that's what these groups are doing now, among other things. They're trying to pave the way for the 12th Imam who's going to come back conquer the world. 12th Imam, what happened to him has been a mystery. In fact, the article I read said we now believe he did exist, but there was even some questions of whether the 12th one ever existed. But whatever, let's just assume he did exist, vanished, and what his fate has been a mystery. All right. Before I proceed, does anybody have any comments, questions? Okay. Another problem that's come up among the Islamic world, because Muhammad never told the people who would follow him, the first followers, I mean, probably the first few people who succeeded Muhammad in the leadership were related to him. In other words, his descendants, or at least descended from his relatives. Then came a big split in Islam between the Sunni and Shiite, and one of the differences between them is who should be the successor. The one group says only Muhammad's family should have the rule. The other group says, no, the rule should be whoever has the most ability, whoever is most capable, basically whoever can go and grab the rule, he should be the ruler. Now, as for which is which, I mean, I have tried to research Sunni and Shiite 3 or 4 times in as many years, and every time I still get them mixed up. I think the Shiite are the ones that's most hostile to the West, and the Sunni are the most easy on the West, but if I'm wrong, you're welcome to correct me. Anyway. All right. Muhammad's followers were eventually to spread out, burst out all over this region, and they remained united. And your book over your chapter, or your book opens this part of the chapter said, this area of the world had been disunited for centuries, actually for about 1,000 years. The last person who united this part of the world had been Alexander the Great. He was in 300 BCE. Well, in about 700 CE, Islam united it again for a few generations. Persia united it before Alexander, then came 1,000 years of disunity, then came unity under Islam for a few generations, then the area fragmented again, and has remained fragmented to this day. But these people were destined to conquer all of North Africa and Spain for a while, and go in here into Europe and conquer into what's today Bulgaria, Macedonia, Albania, Yugoslavia, and Greece, and hold it for a while. And then go on east and conquer Afghanistan and Pakistan. But they always ran into one barrier that seems to have stopped them everywhere they went. Their armies could fight really well when fighting in an open desert. They've oftentimes fought from mounted horseback, mounted cavalrymen, who could swoop down on an enemy, but somehow they did not fight very well when they were fighting in an area that had a lot of bushes, a lot of trees, a lot of hills and mountains and valleys and rainfall, where that you could not see for miles from a vantage point. They just simply did not fight that well, and that has remained true of them largely to this day. They're fighting a lot the way Muhammad fought. From horseback, cavalrymen. They became excellent swordsmen, fighting with their swords from the back of a horse. But not too good. And they became excellent even with rifles, as long as they were fighting in an open type desert. But they simply could not handle jungles. And that's why they got so far in India, and when they got to the fertile part of India, they were stopped. They got into Europe, into Spain, and Spain is one of the roughest parts of Europe. But when they got to France, again, they stopped. They were stopped. They've had a difficult time when they've not been fighting in the type of terrain that they were used to in Arabia. All right. Since your book stops at this point to go on with the teachings of Muhammad, I will too. Now believe me, I'm going to get back to what happened to Muhammad's followers, what happened to Islam in later times. What did Muhammad believe? Well, first thing, he believed that he was a prophet that had the most recent message from God, who'd be called Allah. That Jesus and Moses, it's not that they were wrong, it's just that they had not been given enough, but that God had revealed in steps. But he had the final revelation. He wrote, or actually he didn't write, his followers wrote down his words into a book, again that we know of as the Quran. Now, Islam has strict behavior requirements. One of them is do not eat pork. And again, they probably borrowed this from Judaism. Another one, do not engage in games of chance. That is, do not roll dice, do not play cards. And folk, with all due respect, I mean, some of these things are addictive. When golf was first introduced to Scotland, the kings of Scotland had to say, hey, we're going to have to stop this golf playing because the soldiers would be playing golf as they marched along from one place to another, and this king became really upset. I mean, some of these things can become quite addictive, as well as time consuming. But again, each of you can make up your mind for yourself. I'm going to have my own comments in a little bit. No drinking alcohol. And later, of course, after tobacco was discovered in the Americas, they added to that no smoking of tobacco either. Yes?
I thought they all smoked hookahs.
They all what?
Smoked hookah. Never mind, I'm mistaken.
Yeah, what is it?
I thought they smoked opium or something.
The Chinese had done, they'd taken in opium.
No, what was it? Heroin is their main export, Saudi Arabia.
They might export it, that doesn't mean they're allowed to use it. I mean, I know of southern people who were not allowed to smoke tobacco, but who grew it and sold it because it was such a good cash crop. I mean, this went on right here in the South a lot when I was younger. It was the best crop you could. In fact, a lot of farmers were about to have to sell their farm, decided to go against their conscience and sell tobacco, and all of a sudden their farms became solvent again because tobacco was in such demand and it seemed like it was relatively easy to grow compared to some other crops. And I've heard that disputed, but anyway. But then they did. Now, when I say that they outlawed smoking tobacco and that they outlawed drinking, we're going to find out that a lot of Muslim men engaged in these practices anyway. There is no religion that can be said that all of its followers abide by all of its rules. And that's true of all of them. And Islam is unfortunately no exception.